Hey, so welcome back to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast show. This is Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escagedo, your hosts. And, well, heck, how's it going, Mark?
It's going good. It's going very good. Just very tired working out in the yard, and I'm glad for Trampled Underfoot coming to the rescue. Otherwise, I'd still be outside digging.
Wow, at this time of day?
Well,
Boy.
there's still daylight. You might as well.
So, well, good. Your work, I mean, that keeps the motor running. It keeps all the fluids, circulating, and I see it as a good thing.
Oh yeah.
You do more of that. I'll sit and watch from afar.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of, as we were talking backstage here before we pushed the button to go live, I've always said that I'm very good at coming up with things for other people to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned that, yeah, I am pretty good at coming up with stuff for myself to do. So it's kind of self-imposed. I can't blame anybody but me. But,
yeah.
It's stuff that's got to be done. I mean, you have to finish. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would take issue with the it has to. Nothing really has to. Just to be a little contrarian here, does anything really? I mean, there's whole ruins across the world of cities where people had. Maybe we should sweep one more, or maybe we should, and it's all covered in vines in a jungle somewhere, an amphitheater covered. There's like monkeys holding apples, sitting on top of and those people for whatever. See, I don't mean to be weird about it, but I'm being weird about it.
What happens after I go is somebody else's business. There's a point where you have to realize that it's going to be somebody else's problem. And
yeah.
I'm not out to, screw anybody over. But then again, I know that everything I'm doing right now, somebody else down the road is going to come along and pull out and do their own thing. And that's fine. That's their business, not none of mine. So I need it to last at least as long as I do, and that's good enough. But, and I'm not the kind of person who is OCD about stuff, a place for everything and everything in its place. I mean,
yeah.
If you look around and you see where I'm at, you can see that that's true. But I want it to at least look like somebody lives there and they care, because it's your house. I mean, it's where you live. It's you got your name on it. And if it's knee high in weeds, it just looks like trash. So, I want it to look halfway decent anyway.
Yeah, I totally, there's places, well, particularly in Europe, where there's whole towns and there's a lot of it that have been around that don't change. You're talking about somebody's going to come along and change. There's places, whole areas, villages where the buildings, sure, the things inside the buildings, of course, certain things change and the people occupy and this and that, but they remain for hundreds and hundreds of years. And yet, obviously, we're young in America. Although that's a complicated thing because they always say, "Oh, America is young. Their history, over here is young." And sure, it is kind of, but it depends on how you look at it. I mean, there's native, although there was a lot of wandering and traveling from one spot to the other, so there's no necessarily structures necessarily here. But we do have a lot of natural, long-standing things. But as far as they have these things, they never change. They haven't changed for years and years and years and years. We don't necessarily have that here. No. As far as buildings,
you're talking about primarily on the East Coast, and you're talking about basically areas that are now being preserved as they are historic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like, as you're saying, when we lived in Germany, we lived just down the street from the oldest continually lived in house in Germany, and it was built in the 1100s.
That's amazing.
But people maintained it, they took care of it, because home ownership over there is extremely expensive. Most people don't own their own house. So if you're fortunate enough to own something, you take care of it. That pride of ownership shows. And I mean, if the paint starts to flake, they are out there fixing it and working on it and touching it up. And so, yeah, when we have something here, if we have a home here that was built in the 1800s, to them, that's just getting broken in. You know, to us, it's an antique. So everything is relative. But it is a part of that pride of ownership. You know, if the door squeaks, you oil the hinges. If something falls off the wall, you fix it and you put it together, you know, get it back up there. And it's all just a part of the blessing and the curse of home ownership.
But I wonder, so in the case of these things that are really old over in Europe, and we do have examples of we have a good handful of examples across the East Coast in particular of old stuff, you know, but not as much by any stretch, you know, but we do have some examples of stuff stretching back 200 years, 200 and something years. I mean, there are forts. There's a fort, the oldest fort settlement, St. Augustine. So that's old, you know.
Yeah, that was 1500s, wasn't it?
That was 50. So you could, but there's, you know, there's compared to your, so, but have you ever thought for the people back then when they built these things and particular homes, let's say homes, not forts, because those are, but like a home, you know, today compared to them back then, I don't know what the difference, like we have this habit of nowadays of like demolishing something and revamping to a new modern look, and it's always a it's sort of like that plastic, take it, use it, dump it in the trash in the recycle bin, you know, and but we don't have that sort of thing where, oh, this house, you know, let's preserve it in a general sense. It's always like, let's modernize. Now we've got these new type of roofs, or now we've got, which is good, you know, but we don't have the tradition of let's just leave this whole section as is, and the people, they don't really mind the toppling of these things. Do you think that people back then, I mean, what do you think about that whole thing? Well, you know,
I think it varies by area and varies by location, but it also has a lot to do with the different building methods, because back in Europe, way back in the day, like that house I was talking about that was built in the 1100s, it was timber frame and then wattle and daub, woven birch branches and then clay rammed in between them. But these walls were also a foot thick and these huge oak beams. So they were building with the materials they had. In Europe, they tend to build with stone. Even nowadays, they build with stone, brick, and block, and then stucco the outside.
Yeah.
Where here we mainly timber frame. It's all wood frame, you know, now 2x4 and 2x6 framed homes.
Yeah.
So they don't last as long. They can last a long time. There's a lot of wood frame homes that were built in the 17 and 1800s. But most of us live in a place that was built within the last 40 to 50 years. So as these homes fall into disrepair and building codes change, it's easier for us to take something apart and completely redo it than it is for them. You know, over there, you're talking about taking down huge blocks. Here, you're talking about cutting a few 2x4s and removing some siding. So
how about
there's not as much value placed on an old home here in most places. Now, if it was something that was built in the 1800s, a brick structure, they tend to get renovated and remodeled and kept up.
Right. Yeah. they're a little bit more permanent, let's say.
Right. So, something that wasn't wood frame tends to be taken a little bit more, care of.
And how about the aesthetics side of it? So, I mean, it's not like, so a lot of those rock boulder buildings that you see, I have a lot of pictures of that in my collection from
Right.
my, they're built with stone, huge, like from whatever quarry they went and got it from locally. Um, do you think so they have so these things over there last that long because they had no choice but to keep them up because it's a pain in the butt, but aesthetically also the trends that you see houses that look all the same, even though those boulder ones tend to have a certain similar look in a village or whatever. But there's something cool about the what you call the history involved. But over here, it doesn't. It like houses, just the whole area seems like
Yeah. Well, we live for today. I mean, again, here it's cheaper for us to build or own a home here than it is home ownership anywhere else in the world. So if you are building a big house for your family in ancient Rome, it was a big deal. It was extremely expensive. You had to be very well to do it. Otherwise, you lived in a little hovel. You did what you could and you put together what you could, and that's where you lived. Here, we got so used to homeownership became easy and inexpensive here because we have so much land. Number one, most of the country still is not inhabited. I mean, I live in Oregon. There are 4 million people living in this entire state. You live in a town that has half the population of my entire state. So space is at a premium where you are. It's not at a premium here. So we can afford to build out. They can't. They have to build up. So most people over there still to this day rent, and they're in multi-story apartment blocks. So the aesthetic, I mean, here it ranges anywhere from, you're right, the little cracker boxes, and that's especially when you start talking about getting in and around the bigger cities, to huge sprawling ranch houses out where you've got some room, and then mobile home and apartment block and second empire and colonial. And I mean, you just run the gamut of whatever style you want.
How about, so I don't know about other than in Europe, other than let's say what we'd see with castles and stuff, that there could be a perceived creep factor. I mean, I know when I visited St. Augustine and I went to I went inside the courtyard, let's say, and it had the ramparts and the whole thing, and I went inside the courtyard and there was the jail, and people could get into one of the jail cells, and it's like dungeon like, and I went in a little bit as a kid. I was like a little creeped. I was like, oh crap, if they close the door on this, like, you're thinking all these things. This is kind of creepy. Well, there's one thing like that, but I don't know that the creep factor is as savage as in the United States with certain home styles, like let's say Victorian style. There's something, and I know it comes from movies.
Yeah.
Because if not, we wouldn't even think that way, right? Or I wouldn't think that way. I don't know about you, but there's a creep factor with these sort of Victorian style homes.
But there's a creep factor in your own home, depending upon your mood. I mean, did you ever watch a horror movie that was so creepy you were looking over your shoulder when you got up off of the chair that you're in and went to the bathroom, peeking around corners and there's a creep factor to the dark just by itself.
Yeah.
Walk out your front door, go around the back of the house, and then come back without looking over your shoulder at like midnight on a moonless night. There's just a creep factor of being alone in the dark, I think. But I think you're right. A lot of it comes from movies, but we also tend to do that ourselves because we automatically relate that.
Yeah.
You know, an old Victorian home is gonna be haunted, and that's just
It has to.
because that's what the movies have told us it should be.
But a a sort of like rural, well, even rural, see, I was going to say, but not a rural, they've even done it to rural places, so you get you get a nice creeped out barn slash rural farm like area, and there's slashers hiding behind every freaking bale of hay, so even that. But so I was going to say, but okay, the less threatening thing is a suburban home where they all look the same and they're painted with like the dullest, and it all looks the same. That would probably be the most safest, distant thing from horror.
Exactly. Or a log cabin.
Whoa.
Unless it's way out in the woods off the grid by a lake. Then you got to watch out for guys in hockey masks with a chainsaw.
See?
So, it just depends on where you're at.
I ran across the channel on YouTube, and it's a couple, and the guy usually is in front of the camera, and his lady is with him, and they're kind of, I don't want to categorize them necessarily, but they are horror enthusiasts to some degree, and they kind of sort of have a little bit of she dresses a little bit within the goth, or at least Victorian. There's something there. And what they do is they travel across America and visit every film site. And it doesn't necessarily have to be horror, although all the ones I've seen have been horror-related movies. They'll visit and they'll do their research and go to the places and actually revisit and film the locations, and then show you screen on screen examples of, okay, this is where this happened. And this didn't happen here. It happened 10 miles down the road, but you would think so because the movie, and so on and so forth. So they did one with, I think it was Anne Rice that did Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah.
They went to New Orleans. And, it has that very old vibe to it, 1700s or whatever. It's just got that look. And they went to the plantation where the guy, breaks out the front doors with his wife in his hands, and the villagers and the whole thing. And it's super cool that they do these trips, and they do that with the picture-in-picture and the whole thing. It just reminded me of that when we were talking now.
Yeah,
with the whole creep factor and all whatnot.
There are a lot of channels out there that do that. They go around to old movie sites and just record the then and now. And they're even doing that with some studio lots, to where this is, this was owned by Warner Brothers and they filmed this here and that here, but it was sold to this company 40 years ago and they did this and that and the other. But over here was this building and over here was that building. So when you see this shot, they go to the old out in CB Valley, California, to where they used to film all the outdoor scenes for the TV series MASH. And there's the mountain from the opening credits, and here's all this, and this is where this tent was, and this is where Colonel Potter's office was, and all this other good stuff. And some of that stuff is intriguing as heck, especially when you see how much things don't change. We expect a lot of things to change over time, but for some reason, a lot of this iconic stuff, these iconic locations, people evidently they try to preserve the way it's supposed to look. Like the outside of the Brady Bunch house that you would see in the TV series. It looks like Marcia's going to come walking out of the front door at any moment. It still looks like it did in the TV series.
That's crazy.
But the people have gone, I won't say overboard, but they've gone to great lengths to keep it looking like that. So, I don't know. I think we do have a proclivity here in the States to try to renovate and upgrade and remodel. But I think a lot of that is Some of it is done due to lack of maintenance, but a lot of it is changing taste, changing styles, and because it's easy for us to do.
Yeah.
About the hardest thing we have to figure out is this a load bearing wall? If I take this wall out, is the roof going to come down on me? And once we establish yes or no, we work within those parameters. But it's relatively cheap for us to take all the drywall down, move a few studs, and hang new drywall, and we have a whole new floor plan. It's easy for us to rip out a bathroom and put in all new fixtures, and relatively inexpensive. But you get over into Europe, in some of these places that were built long before indoor plumbing was around, you can literally see from the outside where they just added on to the whole back end of the building, and that's where all the plumbing is, because they couldn't run it through the whole house. Yeah. So you have the kitchen on the ground floor and bathrooms up above it upstairs.
Yeah.
It's just not as easy for them to do that as it is for us.
I mean, you can't really run electrical easily, snaking through walls and this and that in those situations. I know that in Cuba also has structures and buildings from the 1500s, right? Made out of stone. Right. And I know when talking to a lot of people that come here, migrate here, let's say, immigrate here, let's say, and they'll say, well, these walls, they're hollow. And I'm like, yeah. And like over in Cuba, you have solid walls. They're made out of, they're freaking rock carved out of this and that. They're solid. I said, yeah, but our outer structure, at least in Florida, for the most part, overwhelmingly, you have cinder block, which is the equivalent of a stone, although it's hollow to make it lighter. So it's pretty darn solid on the outside, but the inside doesn't necessarily require one to have, the division of rooms doesn't need to have this huge, could you imagine cinder blocking everything, every wall inside? Yeah. What's the reason for that? There's no, unless you're building some sort of, bunker. And so this whole drywall, so they're not exposed to in general, the drywall concept. And right. So they look at it as sort of flimsy, let's say.
Right.
And which it is compared to rock, but it's not necessary.
Well, but out here in the West, see, you and I live in extreme environments because you have the threat of hurricane all the time. Yeah. We have the threat of earthquake. So usually in an earthquake, the first buildings that are damaged are the ones that are made of stone and brick. Here, we want that timber frame because it'll flex. It'll move during an earthquake. We don't have the high winds to deal with.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but we want that flex. We want things to be able to move. So if there's a 4.0, yeah, it'll shake for a little bit, but then it stops and everything's fine. And the only damage you get is stuff falling from walls or off of shelves or what have you. You're not talking about a roof collapse or a wall falling over. You do get that with brick buildings and stone buildings. So out here, it tends to be metal frame for larger buildings, and then wood frame for smaller buildings.
Yeah.
So, it's just it's just, you've got to build for the environment, but you also have to build with the materials that you have on site. I mean, you get out on the plains, you found where there are relatively few trees, you found a lot of places that were built out of straw bales. They would bale up straw and compact it real tight and then stack these bales up, and then adobe or stucco or plaster or whatever on the inside and outside, and that was your house. Of course, your walls are 3 feet thick, but it stayed up. So, but trees weren't available. I mean, there just were very, very few of them. So, you build with what you've got to build with. And in Europe, they had an abundance of stone. So they used it.
Yeah, they sure did.
I mean,
They sure
and
did.
there are still, I mean, I saw a video come up in my recommendeds. I haven't watched it yet, and I should have if I'd have known we were going to be on this topic.
I didn't know either.
But there is a channel. It is called, let me see if I can find it here real quick. It's in my suggested. Oh boy, this will get edited out now because I said that it won't. I'm trying to find it. Come on, where are you? Okay. The channel is called Told in Stone. And he's got some great old videos. The guy's over in Europe, and he kind of goes on various different tours. Just, I think he's based in the UK, and he'll go to mainland Europe and go, on vacation and go visiting here and there. And he released a video about 4 days ago called Roman Houses That Are Still Inhabited Today.
No,
Well,
that's awesome.
I mean, there's a good reason for building with stone when you can, but not all environments are made for that. And, as far as a drywall wall or a wood framed house being flimsy, well, there's a lot of them out there still made out of wood that have been around since the 1700s. So they've lasted this long. I guess it's just like anything else. If you want to keep it, you got to take care of it.
Yeah.
So
there's you remember that show? I think it used to be on PBS where it was that guy that would go on different across Europe and the world. He's a guy with glasses, dirty blonde hair.
Oh, Rick Steves.
Rick Steves.
Yeah.
Rick Steves. I love his shows. I love how he goes into an area and he lives it. I don't know that he's the originator, but he's been around for a long time, right?
Yeah, he's been around for a while.
Dude, his like journeys into a different like location anywhere in the world, he sets it up as a casual American tourist, but with knowledge, and it's such a fun. That's one of my favorite shows. He really goes in depth. Months ago, I mentioned to you one of his shows, and I didn't mention that it was him because I didn't recall the name, where he goes to Wales, and as he does his travel through Wales, he meets the locals and walks through the villages and goes to the castle and the history of it. And it's just such like, I had never experienced visually through that's the internet, Wales in that way. There's so much more than what in my mind. And what he presented, the castle, the village, you'd have your castle up over there, and then below you have the village, and the village is like a time capsule, of Britain back in the day. It's still like, and the villagers they speak English, but they speak their Welsh tongues. So, and they prefer that. Right. And it's just such a great thing to see. And then they traveled over to Liverpool and stuff. What a journey. But yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
I do too. I like the adventure of it. And I got to do some traveling in Western Europe while we were stationed over there. We're talking Germany, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, France, Switzerland, and Austria. And when the Berlin Wall came down, that 4th of July weekend, we just drove off the map. I mean, we visited towns I think we were the first Americans to go to since World War II ended. It's because, I mean, we just literally drove off the map. And you're driving down this main street, you come out of town, and all of a sudden the road ends in a cow pasture. And it's like, okay, we got to turn around and come back this way. If we'd have had a map, we'd know, but we didn't. So what the heck? But it's an adventure, It
was an adventure.
Yeah, it's just going and seeing the thing. We decided that we could do one of two things. We were stationed over there, so we were going to spend at least 3 years in a place where most people save up all their lives to spend a 2-week vacation. We're being paid to live there for 3 years. We can either buy stuff or we can buy memories. So that's what we did. I mean,
That's
jump
great.
on the train and take off down to Lucerne, Switzerland, and spend the day walking around doing whatever. It was about $30 for a round trip ticket. Or jump in the car. Paris was a 5-hour drive. Go spend the weekend there and just walk around, explore the Louvre, go see the Mona Lisa, go see Michelangelo's David, and go up to the top of the Eiffel Tower and check out the view of the entire city. I mean, we figured we were being paid to be there. Let's go see it. Let's go do it.
I always remember my friend. I've told you this story before, but it doesn't matter because many people might not have heard it. But my friend Chuck told me a story once that he had gone to. He decided, one day I'm going to go visit Europe, and he took a vacation to Europe. And later he comes back, and we're all sitting around and talking, and he's telling us stories and this and that. And he tells me the story of that. Yeah, so. We took the flight and ended up in London, and I got right off the plane, and I had to stay over because I was going to Paris, because I want to go to Paris and have dinner at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and have myself a dinner and experience what that is like. And but he stopped over and had some time to walk around and this and that. He was tired, so he sat at a bench and rested his head. And he was just, and a Bobby, the way he said, a Bobby came up to me and whacked me with the baton on the bottom of on the sole of my foot really hard. And he said, "There's no sleeping around here," And he stood up and he was like, he's like, "Oh no, I'm on vacation, this and that." And the guy starts talking to him, this British English Bobby, and my friend said. And you know what? I didn't understand a single word this guy was telling me. I was thinking to myself, doesn't anybody speak English around here? Because so this is what he said. This is an American guy, good friend of mine, awesome storyteller. He said, "Doesn't anybody in this country speak English around here? What the heck's going on?" And he ends up in Paris, where he was shocked to find that the Parisians all spoke English that was intelligible to him. He was like, "Why, this is such a pleasure. I understand what everybody's saying." But in England, he was at a total loss. It was so hilarious, dude. It was so hilarious.
I found just the opposite. I discovered that if you at least attempt to speak the language, you'll get a lot more respect that way. So I learned a little bit of German. I learned a little bit of French. And I was able to communicate, except in one place in Paris where I finally had to ask the guy, I just wanted a Coke. I just wanted something to drink. I finally had to ask the guy if he spoke German, which he said he did. And then I was able to order in German.
Wow.
Because I could not understand his French. He just refused to speak slowly. So, But the minute I said German, he was like, "Oh yeah," and then, we were just fine.
When I worked in the Everglades, we get so many darn people. I've told you this one before, but it's always fun to retell. And I'm sitting there. We're all sitting around the register, and a couple comes right up. Very pleasant couple. They come right up, and they're British. They're English. And they say, and I'm taking care of the register that day, and the guy says something to the effect of, I'm going to say it bad, but he says, "How much for able to?" in his way, and I repeated back, "Well, sir, it's this much, and this is much." But it came out of, so my ears always follow like the little melody and so I repeat. But when I said that, it was so automatic that I felt embarrassed, and all my friends behind me, my coworkers, were on the floor cracking up. The guy standing there looking like he doesn't know what the heck's going on. And the lady, and I am so embarrassed. And I said, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I listened to your melody." I even told the guy, I listened to the way you talk, and my voice just started stumbling into that kind of thing. And they're all cracking up behind me. I found that super hilarious when it happened.
the reason I'm laughing so hard is because I found myself doing the same thing. If you have a lot of folks over in Germany, especially in the areas where there were a lot of American GIs, they speak English.
Yeah.
So, but they have a cadence to the way they talk. And they may drop articles, they may leave out certain key phrases. We going to store, things like that instead of the store. And I found myself when I'm talking to someone who is a German speaking English, I would start doing that as well and kind of mimic their accent.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just pick it up and you just do it. But I am that way. I was told when I came back from Fort Rucker, Alabama, that I sounded like I was from Alabama. I didn't hear it. I didn't think so. But just about everywhere I lived down south, I would start picking up certain little mannerisms and certain little phrases and certain ways of pronouncing certain words.
That's an amazing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not intentional. I wish I could control it, but I just find myself getting into that rhythm.
It shows plasticity or the ability to blend in, or you're subconsciously you're wanting to make a continuum of communication.
Right.
It speaks to if a person it's if you're rigid on your you could do that too, but it does show when
Right.
one tries to adapt a certain amount of what would you call courtesy, let's say, even though it's not a big deal, it is what it is.
Well, it's all about communication, so I want them to understand me. So if I can put it in a way that they're used to, then so be it. I mean, some parts of the South, it doesn't matter what soft drink you order, it's a Coke. You want to go get a Coke? Let's go get a Coke. Okay, what kind of Coke you want? Root beer. It doesn't make any sense anywhere but the South. But I'm used to it and I'm fine with it. It's okay, of course, I'm the word nerd anyway. And I kind of like the little interplay there is, and the different ways we say the same thing. I like to watch the language evolve. We've talked about it before. I mean, there are some things that are just silly, like people who have heard a phrase but never seen it written, and they get it wrong, from the get-go. So things like that. One that I saw the other day that I thought was absolutely hilarious, that made my jaw drop, and I was just like, what? People are actually using this, was acceptable. But it was written out EXCEPT, except a bowl. BOWL, like you would have cereal in.
Really?
This is acceptable. No, that's you missed it by that much, dude. I mean, it's not.
But let me inject this, because I've been in my unquenchable research through all things to do with history. And by the way, it's just such a broad, expansive thing that it's impossible to consume and properly align. It's too big of a topic, but as far as, and language in itself is, but I came across some information about language and stuff, and I've shared a few on my personal, how words blend together, how words root together, but end up sounding totally different. And with linguistics, they totally, even though for us, like what you just said, or like the one, remember the one that we talked about in one episode where I said, oh, I've always thought of it as a bowl in a china shop, when really it's bull in a china shop, which would cause tremendous amounts of damage. And that's the point of the saying. However, in a roundabout way, I would think of a bowl in a china shop as being delicate and be careful with it. So it ends up rounding the same idea at the end of the day, although it's much more graphic with the bull.
Mhm.
But so they suggest strongly, and they have a lot of evidence to it, that words will change
Mhm.
to different meanings, and phrases will do the same. So we'll have a lot of the things we're talking about now, and the way we connect words together in sentences, come 50, 75, 100 years from now.
Right.
A few of them, at least, we don't know how many, because we have a different situation going on with the internet, where communication is so, like, there is a mainframe where people can easily access, and so things don't, it's easier to maintain a certain thing. In my mind, I think that it's going to be a slower change now, but maybe I could be wrong. But I foresee words and phrases adapting to new meanings as time goes on.
It is an evolution, and if anything, I think it's going faster now.
Okay.
Because we can communicate instantaneously, I mean, all across the world. So when you see one person get something just a little bit wrong, there's going to be a few people who will call them on it, but most folks just accept it. We've gotten to this point to where if you see somebody spell something wrong, we don't say anything about it. But as more and more people start spelling it the same way, the language evolves that much quicker.
That's true.
So, and it's out of politeness. We don't want to be seen like that guy, but I am that guy. If you use the wrong there, I will call you out. I am that guy.
Or your.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
I am that guy. But most people aren't. Most people don't want to be seen as that guy. So they'll let it go. And then they get into, well, it doesn't matter. Yes, it bloody well does matter. We're trying to communicate, and we have a system. It's less important how you use the system than it is that we have a system. The minute you do whatever you want to do, we no longer have a system, and that's when it starts breaking down. Words mean things,
Some things, it's true, but we're holding on to things as we were taught, which is, the reasonable thing when you're talking about communication. Because let's say, I don't know, a pamphlet, a booklet, a book, a legal document, and so on. It contains all these words strung together, and it contains information that the person that wrote it wants to impart to the reader, for what various different reasons and whatever, but to impart the information, and we have a system, but inevitably, I guess we're agreeing that certain words, even as much as we try, with the distance of time, the stretch of time, certain phrases, and we've seen it in the past, are going to alter, so that what we deem rightly so as the official, let's say, way to say it, eventually, by hook or crook, it's certain things will be changed. But I remember, like, my old man, he used to call me into his office, and he'd say, "Come here, son," and I'd come in, and he'd be writing, and he'd be rewriting what he wrote in Spanish in English, so he could send it out, some important document, to whatever, to the government, in many cases, to a foreign country, for some reason, just whatever reason. And he'd have me sit and reread it and offer him my editing, because proofreading, because I'm much more fluent and adapt to English, and to him it was really a second language, and maybe he just wanted to check that everything, but he had it all written out. But he would go and write words in talking about a certain massacre that occurred, to bring to light to it, because he was always into people's rights, human rights, and such. And a massacre occurred, and then the body was moribund, moribund. And I had never heard that word in my freaking life, moribund.
Yeah.
I was like, Dad, just say that the guy was dead or this or that. And he says, well, no, son, that's what I want to use in this word, in this sentence, and this and that. I said, moribund, Dad, moribund. I'm like a teenager, and I've never heard that word before. I don't have the distance of time in my life to have consumed all this, different types of words that, And I said, Dad, it doesn't matter. Just do it so that. I said, Dad, it doesn't matter. Just it's going to say the same thing. And he says, no, son, words do matter. And what you say and how you say it.
They do.
And I was like, I stopped for a moment and I was like, oh, okay. But years later, that one sentence that he shared with me, it's always in my mind. Words do matter, and they do. They do.
They have meaning, and they have meaning for a reason, but they can also change meanings over time. The word confide, we use it to mean like keeping a secret, something held in confidence between two people. It used to mean it was used in place of
confidence.
Is confident that, I'm confident that you'll be on time, or you could say, I confide you'll be on time.
Yeah.
So words do shift meanings over, but the bigger problem, I think, and it's not really a problem, it's a fun issue that I kind of track, is you have old archaic sayings that nobody remembers why it's a saying or how the saying came about, because what the saying applied to, it just isn't done anymore. Somebody who's real anxious and real, up just on quote unquote on pins and needles over something used to say he's on tenterhooks. Well, nobody knows what a tenterhook is anymore. Tenterhooks were used to stretch out fabric.
Meat? Oh, I was thinking meat and stuff.
They stretch out fabrics to dry, just freshly woven fabrics. Well, we don't use those anymore. So nobody knows what a tenterhook is. And things can morph from there. I mean, there are a lot of old sayings that we still use today that we just don't know where the heck they came from, So I don't know. The language does evolve. I don't think the language itself is evolving faster. I think that when a certain portion of it evolves, it spreads faster than it ever did, because communication is so easy these days. It's where it used to be you would get mail every 6 months, or news of something would travel so slowly. The evolution took a lot longer because the information took so long to get. Now, with it being so instant, I don't think the language is evolving as fast as certain words are evolving. So ideas spread quicker than they ever have, but our ability to communicate in certain ways, I think, is being hampered by we just don't pay attention, or we just don't care to correct. We don't pay as much attention to how it's written or which is kind of counterintuitive. We spend so much time typing. So much of our communication is done in text. I mean, when was the last time you got a phone call?
Maybe a few days ago.
Yeah. And I used to get several, phone calls a day. It's just now everything is in text, and you would think we would be better at writing out in English, and we're just not.
Well, we abbreviate, or I don't know that I do, but there's abbreviation that occurs. So everything is a diminishing, and it's also, you can't, it is what it is. It's going to go where it's going to go. There's no authoritative, this is,
Right.
going to be this way, and everybody's going to have to follow suit. Everybody does what the heck they want. But there is sort of an abbreviation and sort of funneling simpler and simpler of, like the LOL. I sometimes forget. Actually, I don't even know anymore. LOL to me is laugh something.
It's laugh out loud.
Laugh out loud. Okay. But I know the first L is laugh, so I just go with that low.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go with L. So to me, the low, but
But there's a good example of that, because that's what it means, is laugh out loud. But we use it just to indicate we got it and it's humorous.
Yeah.
Or that we're joking.
Heck, I did that with you in a private message earlier today.
Yeah, so did I. But neither of us were actually laughing out loud, were we? Probably
I wasn't
not.
laughing. No, I was just saying. You know what it does? It's like in slight jest or funniness within the context of
It indicates humor, that this is not really to be taken as something serious.
Yeah, which is effective.
It's very effective, because you can call somebody the lowest form of life on the planet, so long as you end it with LOL and put a smile emoji on the end of it. Oh, well, he didn't mean it. It was just a joke.
Yeah, but you see, there, you dumb, this and that. LOL. I would, it would. Oh, you idiot! LOL. I would look at it and say, but you can get away with it because of the LOL.
See, I want to start using MAS, because I'm not laughing out loud. I just want to use MAS for mildly amused smirk. Okay, that made me go, all right. But no, nobody else is going to use it.
They are effective, though. They are effective. I will say this about the language and transition so what I've been studying with the Romans, they gave Latin to all the areas of Southern Europe. But what did the Europeans in the fields and people that weren't part of the clergy, they adapted what they heard,
right,
and it became that sort of vulgar Latin. It wasn't the princely, official Latin. It was the street, farm, rural, and then all of a sudden, from that source, you have languages that created meaning,
right?
But they weren't the official thing. They were a derivative of. And yet at the end of the day, they became, and so we're speaking languages. English is an example. All these languages that we speak, except the root languages from antiquity, are derivatives of something that was original, but probably wasn't as expansive in its word count and definitions, because we have so much more now to describe so many more art, like plastic is a thing, microphone, it's just whatever. So we're it's constantly adapting and mutating to where we're at now. It's such an amazing thing, actually.
And that's why it will continue to evolve, because as new things are invented and new things are developed, we have to have words for those. I mean, that's one of the big arguments if you speak to anybody from the UK. Is it aluminum or is it aluminium? The guy who discovered the element, a Brit, by the way, Sir Humphrey Davis, he named it aluminum, and it stayed aluminum for many, many, many years. Then some toffs over at Oxford, or maybe it was Cambridge, one of the two, decided that the word aluminum didn't sound classical enough. And I do my fingers in air quotes. It did not sound classical enough. They didn't like the word aluminum, so they changed it to aluminium. Well, this was during the time when we had won the Revolutionary War. We had declared our independence, and all things British were bad. So when they changed the word, we said, We're not changing it. And in fact, we're going to go back and we're going to drop all the U's out of words like honor and color and neighbor and stuff like that, because we want to separate ourselves away from Great Britain. So we never changed.
They got that extra U and whatnot from those words from the French. That was left over from that whole thing.
Exactly. And let's be clear, there never was a golden age where everything was perfect in English, where everything was written out correctly and commas were used in the right spots and the apostrophe was, but there never was a golden age of perfection in English. It has always been an evolving language, and common usage has always been the deciding factor. If you decide that this word means this, then that's what it means. Common usage has been the deciding factor, no matter what the linguists and the language experts at whatever university have to say about it.
I mean, so there's a good thing about people that are focused on language as a discipline and them to study it and then to propagate it. But they, as much as they want to, can't control that evolution. And I don't know that their purpose is to control it necessarily. Although individually there might be people that are like, nose up in, in the air and snotty and like, snobby, I'm sorry. And like, we want to preserve it and this is the correct way and this and that. But the whole purpose of language, but you can't be so lax with your writing and your this and that where there rules be damned, because then you're just a hot mess.
Yeah, nobody can understand you. Again, it's all about communication. You're trying to you're trying to convey an idea, and if you're the only one that knows what you mean, it's valueless. So you do have to use the correct words. Punctuation helps. We don't want to talk about trying to get your uncle, who happens to be named Jack, out of the saddle and off of the horse. Put the comma in the right location. Otherwise, you in trouble. So,
I mean, the whole purpose of language is, and writing at a fundamental level is to transfer information from the person writing it to the person consuming it. If you can get that message across, we know that in certain situations, let's say like Egypt, you have all these like hieroglyphics, and they put down a message. But for centuries and centuries, the people that were receiving it, after they were searching through the catacombs, they don't know what the heck. So that's a huge situation. And there's a lot of situations where there's languages that are dead languages that we don't know what the hell's going on. And they're trying to discover it. But that can happen too. I don't know that that's going to be the case with, let's say, English, because at the end of the day, unless I
don't think so.
Yeah, I think that we're in a different scenario now. But back in antiquity, less people or technology, a whole civilization's wiped out, conquered. Whereas now we're in a different place. But yeah, language
or just people moving on and moving out to areas where that language is no longer used. I mean, you see that happening all over the African continent. As people leave certain areas and move into other areas, they have to adapt. They learn the language of the area, and their kids learn the language of the area, leaving fewer people back where they came from to speak that language. Their language is dying every year. And it's mainly because they've just fallen out of use because so few people use them that it's just not something anybody cares about anymore. And that's kind of sad, to be honest, because that is also human history. And it is just as you say, when you find things written in a ancient dead language, what does it say? Is this a shopping list, or is this something profound about how they lived, how they strive to make their environment a better place, or what happened to the area? I mean, we can look at the Anasazi Pueblo And we know there were people there, but we have no idea where they went, what happened to them, or why. They didn't have a written language. There was nothing to leave behind to explain. Not that they cared to explain. So, we're left to guess and speculate because that's all we can do.
One of the most mysterious, and I'm sure, the cool thing too is that we can always find, at the very minimum, if you're curious about something, at the very minimum, being curious today in our modern world, you can quench that curiosity all the way up through the internet, all the way up to the point of being current with the people that study that. We have the ability to, because the information's there. So that's a good thing. I've always been distantly, because it's like, who's going to sit there and go through it unless you're so interested but I've been interested in that sort of cuneiform, what's the Babylonian, or I don't know, where they're little birds' feet in all sorts.
That's cuneiform,
I just find it mind-blowing looking at it. I'm like, what the, and yet the information's there that they left for us. So that's one thing that one day, if I'm not busy doing what I'm doing now, I'd like to go and check out, just for the curiosity. And a lot of people take advantage of that too, in the conspiracy world, and they'll take that because it's so mysterious, and most people are going to take the time to, and then they'll invent like whole crazy, things about it. And then people that don't have the time, they're just going to round it up to the nearest, whole number. And okay, so it's the lizard people that came down and they wrote the tablets, and then we're done.
Those lizard people, man. It all comes back to the lizard people. They're the ones. They're the evil ones. Our reptilian overlords.
I'll tell you what. It happens to be our most popular episode. Rendezvous with the lizard people. To this day, it's got like 15,000 views.
15,000 views and counting. Have you read the comments?
I did go through some of the comments.
Oh,
and people,
my God.
Dude, some people take this stuff serious. That, one person said, and, in this scenario, it's so great. One person said, between the both of you, nothing.
Yeah.
One guy said, between the two of yous, nothing. The way he said it, and I just laughed because you could tell that this person is passionate about the reptilian agenda, and he wasn't satisfied with our, and so his answer was, "Well, you don't know nothing."
Well, he didn't get it. He didn't get it. He didn't get it, and I'd like to save that for another. I'd like to do another episode. I'd like to revisit it. And this is inside baseball. Only the true people will get this, okay? If you've been with us a while, you'll get this. I would like for us to kind of go back and address that episode, but I'm going to have to listen to it again because I don't remember what I said. We have talked about so much stuff. But what I'd like to name that episode, a reptilian overlord's second contact.
Reptilian overlord.
Our reptilian overlord's second contact.
Okay.
And just revisit the topic and see what happens. I'm that guy. I want to turn up the heat and stir it up a little bit and see what happens.
Can we name it, instead of R, to lead with reptilian, so that it's the first impactful? Reptilian overlords, our second contact, something like that.
There you go. Okay, that'll work. So
that it leads with reptilian, just for effect. Yeah. I'm just saying, it's our most, we have a lot of cool episodes that are entertaining if you're, whatever you're doing. And honestly, that one is the one that, and it says a lot. It says a lot about, it says a lot about people. It says a lot about everything. We're going to leave it at that, though. It's time for us to boogie. We do have a Facebook page over on Facebook. It's the Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and we usually leave, pictures and links over there. You can leave suggestions over there as well if you are thinking of something cool that we could talk about. We're quite willing to entertain your ideas. So keep that in mind. We do this show every Tuesday, and that's 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast, and that's over here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. And we also have our website where you can catch our past episodes. Just you go over to the website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and you press that Wayback Machine button, and you'll see our past episodes. And there's a lot of interesting, fun topics there for you to check out. So we're also sponsored by
Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. He is the sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com. If you're looking to build up a website, you want to get a nice web presence going other than your social media, Steve is your man. He's your one-stop website shop. He can help you get together, design and host a website. He can help you build up a web store if you have merchandise you would like to sell, or if you would like to get some t-shirts, baseball caps, etc., and other objects. Objet d'art. He can help you hook you up with a print-on-demand company. They will take care of all the printing. They will take care of all the shipping. You just sit back and count the numbers of orders you're getting. Steve has very, very competitive pricing, and he specializes in websites for makers and the maker community. However, he's not restricted to makers or the maker community. So he's your man to talk to, Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media, Harneal media.com.
All right. Well, I had fun on this one. I didn't expect us to go through the, winding roads that we did.
I still don't know how we got there, but somehow we managed to do it. We started off talking about working in the yard and ended up talking about the language. And just to remind everybody over there in the chat here on YouTube, well, this was the audio portion. Now we're going to do our little end scene here, and then we'll come back over and talk to you guys in the chat and interact with y'all and probably spend another hour BSing here. But that's how we do it.
All right. So we'll catch you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe.
Take care. All right. Okay. Man. Well, let's take a look at what's going on here in the chat, because I know we had Jerry's Machines out here. He's been throwing in one-liners most of the evening. He is that guy with the chainsaw. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, he says his torture chamber walls are divided with block walls, cuts down on noise travel. But does it really? I find the block walls are real echoey. It's
better than a thin sheet of chalk, dusty chalk with paper in between it, though. Although you're right, the what you call the cinder block might have some reverberation occurring. I don't know, man. I think that acoustical foam might be the best way to ensure a death trap room does not leak sound, but we don't all have the luxury of going to the local Home Depot and setting up shop before a kill. So you got to get your dungeon supplies where you can find them, and if all you got is block, you might check into some foam. They got the foam panels there at Home Depot, so you could fill them with sand. That does help.
That's okay. All right, I hadn't thought of that. Jim Dockrell says lots of original prairie homes were made from sod. Yeah, absolutely. Digging up big chunks of sod and stacking them on top of one another and just building up walls with that. There was, you build with what you got. And when you're out there on the prairie, let's not forget, if you're working your way across the Great Plains of North America and your wagon broke down, and you were too dumb or too lazy to fix it, that's just where you stayed. So you had to build shelter out of whatever you could find.
But wait a second. If somebody's wagon broke down in the prairies, I've asked you this before, because it's always a thing that, I know that we answered it somehow, but I forget. My biggest concern is the obvious one, water. Not to mention food, but so if somebody broke down and they didn't break down next to a water source, they had to dig for water.
Yeah. Or find it. I mean, you follow the animals. The animals know where there's a source of water. I mean, that's what the Native Americans did for
that was
centuries.
Your answer last time. I think that was your answer last time.
You know,
yeah, you're gonna have to...
you dig for it or you follow the animals. I mean, that's
there's no. I mean, you need the water and you need the animals. You just need those.
Yeah.
Hey, I just before you continue, I did come across a video, which was very cool. Although albeit short, but it was cool, where a guy, I think he was an American guy, went to Africa, to the bush, and visited with one of the last remaining official hunter-gatherer
tribes,
and visited with them. And these people literally hunt and gather. There are cities in the outskirts that these people are aware of. And so the guy sat down with them and asked them many questions about life, the universe, and everything. And his answers, the tribesman chief, and you should see his it's such a striking video. He asked some deep philosophical questions, and the tribesman leader, chief, every answer was, whereas you or I might think, and Mark, the future and the universe and this and that, and you might like expand on some crazy stuff. His answers, what's the most important thing in life? He says, meat.
No pretentiousness there, just survival. Yeah.
And everything was, and they said, and he said, what do you think of when you look at the moon? Man, we should have done this for the main thing because it's really cool. He asked him, what do you think of when you look at the moon? And the chief says, bad. And what do you mean bad? So he tried to expand, and they expanded all right. He said, at night, when the moon is full, there's plenty of light, and it's more difficult for us to hunt because the animals can see us. We have to be very, very, it's much more difficult. He explains this in his way, and it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then what happens when you die? And he says, we take the body and we put it in a cave, and we go on.
Yeah,
that's it. There's no what we do as a Western society. There's none of that.
Yeah.
It's all, listen, we're surviving. Tomorrow we got to hunt again. And so in another episode, which I didn't see because I'm not a hunter-gatherer and I couldn't see it, he goes on a baboon hunt. Okay. And I just couldn't stand seeing the poor little baboons. They did show preview, and it looked like frickin' World War 19. Imagine darkness, and then you see flames and arrows, and you hear baboons. It's just like insanity. And I was sitting here horrified. I know I'm way more refined. I mean, I may not be the most refined person, but boy, I was like, and the guy even said that, guys, this next episode, it's not for everybody. Insane. So yeah.
Well, Jerry said, I'm trying to get that mental image out of my, pardon me while I go poke out my mind's eye. Jerry says, it echoes inside, but the sound doesn't travel out. They can scream all they want and the neighbors never hear them. Okay. So a pragmatic approach. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, jeez.
What?
Oh, talking about torture chamber walls and all this other good stuff. Jerry's Machine says nature and weather will play a huge part in whether or not a structure survives time. Exactly. And that's what I mean about maintenance on it. If it's getting wet and you got your paint's peeling and stuff like that, you gotta maintain it. You know, whether you're replacing certain pieces of it or what have you. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you know all this stuff, but it's people maintaining it that makes it survive as long as it has. It's only when things just get left to nature and time that they start to collapse. There was I hesitate to say documentary, but I don't know what else to call it. It was on the History Channel years ago, back when the History Channel actually was about history, was called After Humans. And it basically started as the whole premise of this was that if humans disappeared off the face of the earth today, what would happen with everything that we have now?
I think, I have seen.
And it was about 2 hours long. And it was basically future casting as to, they talked about the first 24 hours, this would happen. The first 7 days, this would happen. The first month, this would happen. Domesticated animals, those that were trapped inside buildings would obviously, perish. They would starve to death or whatever. But those that were outside and could move around would revert back to become feral again. And crops would do this, and trees would do that, and just all kinds of stuff. It was really neat.
Let me intersect one little thing, though. You're saying dogs and stuff. In our Western world, it's so weird. In the video, I hate to bring it back up.
Uh-oh.
The hunter-gatherers had dogs.
Yeah.
And they asked them, well, your dogs and this and that. And it says, dogs are good because they help us hunt the baboons. They come and the baboons start to go, and the dogs, and they help us, and, they're with us and stuff. But the dogs get eaten by hyenas and so on. So he's explaining his whole world, and you're seeing this dog sitting there on the ground in this African savanna jungle, and he's just part of the group, and you could imagine. Obviously, these are 21st century hunter-gatherers, but you could imagine all throughout history how dog has been right next to us, assisting us. And beneficial, vice versa. Well, that scenario you just said about the reclaiming of the wild, if humans aren't here, our Western doggies are little poodles with the little bow ties and the little perfume and little pom-pom, little cheek, rubbing colorets and this and that. All these little dogs, even my Vigo, that's an actual official hunter, because he is a hunter, my dog.
Yeah, he's in the sporting group,
He's in the sporting group, but I'm sorry. No matter how, he all these dogs, their chances are less likely than those hunter guys. Because those dogs over there, they get thrown a bone or two after the fact. So they know already, these dogs from Africa, let's say, they're already kind of used to like, boy, we don't got much. We better. But over here, they're pampered.
Yeah, and they mention that. They talk about that. They say that some of the breeds will basically die out. Those that can't adapt and learn to hunt, the ones that are just scavengers, pretty soon they're going to run out of things to scavenge. Yeah. And, it's hard for us to imagine a time when packs of wild poodles will roam the earth. But, I mean,
imagine. No, but see what you just said.
Yeah.
I would never have, that connection did not even, until you just conjured into reality a situation. I can say that I would not bet on it, but we don't know that there might be some poodles.
Yeah. Well,
there might be,
you want to think of something comical? Think about a wild pack of 30 Yorkshire Terriers running down the street, terrorizing a neighborhood, Yes, exactly.
Well, dude, in numbers, because if you think about it, what do mice and rats do? Well, yeah, there's plenty of them. So if you get a bunch of little poodle, little pom, they look like, do you remember that episode in Star Trek, the little round fluffies Trizzles?
Tribbles.
So they'd be like little tribbles running around in this dystopian Earth, and you have these little white puffs running down the highway.
Yeah,
dude, it's so great. It's what you just, dude. It's great. They should make a movie about this, dude.
Oh, somebody probably has. Well, if not, it's coming to a theater near you. Check your local listings for date and time.
And they're are hidden behind the little puff, the little powder puff. So it's like, wow, 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 and they're going up. I mean, I don't know who'd be afraid of them, but there you have it.
Just picture the domestic scene of the silhouette of the German Shepherd standing, in the sunset, and the sun's behind him, and he's standing there majestically on the peak, and then trade that German Shepherd and put in a pug. There, it's good comedy.
Yeah, it's not looking good for. I bet you the wild dingoes would be okay.
Well, yeah, but they're in another country. I mean, we're talking about, I guess we're talking about North America, but they go through all that stuff. They went through it all, and it was, I mean, they estimated it would take approximately 400 years for a car to rust back down to nothing. But the longest surviving things they estimated were our concrete structures, and something like the Hoover Dam, Boulder Dam, whatever you like to call it, outside of Las Vegas, that could last another 8,000 to 10,000 years. They estimated, because there is so much concrete in there that it's going to take that long to erode, unless, of course, there's a huge, ginormous earthquake or Yellowstone supervolcano erupts or something like that. But without an outside force, just left to sit there and decay by itself, they estimate it'll take about another 10,000 years before it goes away. So it was really wild. I mean, just everything being reclaimed by nature, and, deer coming back into central Los Angeles and what have you. I mean, just
why not?
It's kind of wild. Well, it would happen. I mean, without predators, without humans, I mean,
my goodness. And then the panthers or catamounts, mountain lions, and so on. Would expand again, because the predators that are especially in Florida, we have the Florida panther, which is basically a bobcat. Yeah. Okay. They're kind of like stuck because we've built up, and they're kind of stuck. So they're endangered down here. Sure. But lacking all the dangers of vehicle collision and all these things, they could use the same highways and roads to expand throughout Florida and multiply, and their hunting ability for other animals. Sure. Oh my goodness. It would be crazy. It would be insane.
Oh yeah. It would be Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, on your street.
Yeah, you want to talk about something that to me tastes, smells of my youth, because that was a show that came on Sundays, and it looked like, back then, it looked like it was from like ancient, even back then, which it probably was, right?
Oh, well, it was 8mm film, 16mm film. Yeah.
That's why,
I loved it. While Jim is over there trying to give the wildebeest a vasectomy, I'm back at the tent mixing up another picture of martinis. Jim always got the crap work, and Marlon Perkins was always there standing in the savannah going, let's go back to the tent.
Do you remember also Jacques Cousteau?
Jacques Cousteau, yes.
That was awesome too. I enjoyed that too. I never understood why all these, it was such a great...
The undersea world of Jacques Cousteau.
It was so wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Dude.
Oh yeah. That was when there wasn't a National Geographic channel. Just every once in a while there'd be a National Geographic special. And that was one of my favorites.
It really was.
Jacques. So let's see. Frankie CNC and Woodworking says, my old neighbor had 15 of them little dogs, and they would get out sometimes. Think hers was mixed with Jack Russell's. Jack Russell Terriers have too much imagination and energy for me. That's just all there is to it.
Too much.
You know, I mean, you can't have a Jack Russell living in an apartment. That's just not going to happen.
No, it's too much. It's too much.
Another one is an Australian Shepherd. They have too much imagination as well.
I don't even.
They need a lot of room to run. You
Yeah.
can't, you know. Certain animals are suited for apartment life or in the city life, but others just need a lot of space to be able to get out and run around, run off some of that energy.
Yeah.
So Frankie also says some places last year had wild animals walking in town. Folks was locked down. Yeah. Yeah. Folks was locked down, and you know, all the bears knocking on doors. Y'all doing all right in there? We ain't seeing you outside.
Oh, really? That's
Who's gonna fill the bird feeder, man? You know.
Yeah, so the bears were like you guys are off your game big time.
Ain't seen none of y'all out in the woods.
So in a way they kind of, even though they're this big threat, which they are, if you do the stupid thing, but they hope that we're around so that they can get some freebies.
Oh sure. Oh, sure.
I mean, so they, they're quite, they don't hate us.
It's not a good thing that they come in and get dependent on trash or whatever, but I mean, we have it a lot out here on the West Coast. You get coyotes, bears, and even cougars and mountain lions coming into town because of the fires. The animals are not just going to sit there and let the fire get them. They're going to run, and they got to go somewhere. And whenever we have a big fire, the wildlife starts heading into town because they just know to get away. It's that fight or flight thing, and you can't fight fire. You got to run from it. And they get a few miles away and invade some other bear's territory or mountain lion's territory. And the strongest one gets to claim that territory, and the weaker moves on. Well, pretty soon you've got cougars in the park. Then you've got coyotes running down Main Street. So they just got to get the heck out.
Cougars in the Park sounds like a bad 70s movie, but continue.
Yeah, well, it could be a band name too. Ladies and gentlemen, Cougars in the Park.
Saturday.
In the park, we saw a cougar. So, yeah, no picnic baskets. That's right. Okay, well, we've done about an hour and a half. Yeah, I think we lost folks when we said we were ending the audio portion, but that's cool.
I mean, we have a system and we stick to it, kind of, sort of. So,
well, but we have new people showing up all the time. I mean, I saw a couple of fresh names out there, and thank you for joining us, you guys. What we do, if you're still with us, what we do is we spend like the first hour. We record the audio portion of our podcast, which gets released on Tuesday mornings. And then after that, we end that part. Then we hoot and holler with you guys here. So
that's right.
Cougars in the Park, a band of 45-year-old women. Be nice, Jim. Be nicer.
Sounds like a party to me.
Yeah, see, Jim Dockrell also says plastic would take a long time to break down. It would take an ice age to break it up small enough. Yeah, maybe. It doesn't biodegrade, but it does photodegrade. But then again, it breaks into smaller and smaller particles that are still floating around. I mean, and that's why we got to figure something out, man. I don't know. I'm not. I call myself a conservationist in that I don't believe. I think it's wrong to pee in the pool, but I think you can still get in the water. Just clean up after yourself. Just don't throw crap around. There
has to be some formality and boundary, but you can't do it. We're meant to enjoy our environment.
Sure.
And guess what? I hate to throw this out. Not really. But, wildlife, animals, the animal kingdom, we're as part of this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then some, as every other thing. We are so part of this ecosystem, it's not even funny. What we do for good, for ill or good, and every variation thereof in the spectrum, we're part of this whole, skit.
Yeah.
And so, there's that.
Yeah.
We're not something separate from it, although we are in certain ways because we
Well,
have this whole reasoning faculty.
yeah, we have developed a consciousness that allows us to see and pay attention to what we do. We're one of the few animals that does, or creatures that does change our environment. But there are a
Yeah.
lot of other animals that do the same thing. Beavers being a prime example. The
Yeah.
beaver will change its environment for its own survival. And
Yeah.
we're similar in that regard,
Yeah.
but we also have the consciousness to let us see. I think it all comes down to respect. We have to respect ourselves and we have to respect our environment,
Yeah.
and basically, I know it's crass and crude, but don't pee in the pool,
Yeah. I
just
mean,
clean up after yourself. You know the right
yeah.
thing.
Well, when partiers come over during spring break and here in South Florida, our beaches, the locals, out of like 100% of locals, you might get, to be on the safe side, you might get a 10% of people that might toss a thing here or there out of 100%. And I'm just giving
Yeah.
a ballpark. But when people from spring break come, they trash the freaking beach.
Oh yeah.
Because of that peeing, and because they're peeing in someone else's pool.
Exactly.
And that if I go somewhere, I remember, anywhere I go, I don't just toss the frickin' now I will say this though, back in the day, cigarette butts, it was that, at least here in Florida, people just flick those every which way.
And I have always despised that. I smoke, but I've always just knocked the fire and knock the fire off, step on it, knock all the tobacco out of it, wad it up and put it in my pocket. I mean, I go through my pockets before they go in the laundry and all that gets thrown away. You don't find them laying around my yard. You don't find them out in the street in front of my house or in the driveway or nothing like that. That's just trashy. It's trash the same as anything else. Just as much as a gum wrapper or whatever. Clean up after yourself. Have more self-respect. Have more respect for other people. Don't be one of those people that says somebody needs to clean this up. No, clean up after yourself.
There's a video on YouTube. It's one of those short skits where there's cars, right? And one car stops at the light and they dump a bunch of stuff out their window. And a guy in an adjacent car sees it, opens his door, gets out. The light's about to change. He grabs the stuff, and it's a bunch of stuff like a paper drink, soda thing, and just a bunch of crap that he threw out. And he picks it all up, and sliding up towards the window, right when the light changes, he throws it right into the driver's side, all of the stuff on top of him, and walks away. And the guy's all pissed and this and that, but he's got no place. This is the funny thing. He's got no place to be pissed. You threw it out, buddy. And even though I wouldn't go get out of my car and do that, because I'm not here to enforce necessarily, but it's not like he didn't have it coming.
I got a story for you. Back when we were stationed in Savannah, Georgia, my wife, the staff sergeant, we got out of the car and were walking up into the post exchange at Hunter Airfield. And a guy in a pickup come around the corner, going to pull into the parking lot. He throws a cigarette butt out his window. My wife changed course, walked over, picked up his cigarette butt, walked up to his driver's side window, stuck her arm in his truck and said, "I think you dropped this." And the guy just kind of looked at it, looked at her, and decided maybe discretion was a better part of valor, took it from her and put it in the ashtray in his truck. She called him on it right there in front of everybody. And I'm like, you're going to get beat up one day, but that was good on you that you did that.
The problem with a situation like that is, and it depends, on many factors, but you never know the person you're approaching.
No, you don't.
What they're capable of, and you're hoping for a reasonable person, and you're not being, you're saying, hey,
right.
Come on, that's one thing, but you don't know what people are capable of and what their damage is in their brain. And so that's why, or at least I've learned that, that I won't even bother at this point, because, people can be insane, and and in many cases they don't follow the same rules, general decency rules, respect rules that one might follow. Well, and why would they? It's their life. I don't know, but so I'm weary of that.
On a military installation, there's a little bit more to it than just that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, number one, there's a lot of witnesses. There were a lot of people in that parking lot, and there were a few people were just like that when she did that. So, he wouldn't have gotten away with anything. But there's also other repercussions. It's because you do have a thing in the military called general military authority. Now, everybody was in civilian clothes. He didn't know, did she outrank him or what?
Right.
She could have found out, who his commander was and gone to them and have them discipline the guy. If you're a soldier, you know that. So if somebody calls you on something, you take it a little bit more seriously, because there are other repercussions that can happen.
So that's within the
that's within the military system, yes.
Right. But out in the street.
Oh, out in the wild, no, she probably never would have done that.
Yeah, because I'm always thinking of what people are, what their insanity is, what their possible insanity might be, and react. You could be the most polite person to someone, and they just blow a gasket in front, and you're like, whoa, what the heck is going on here? So that's the first thing I thought, but within the context, I totally get it, know.
But then again, he may have been an officer, but if you're an officer, you're wrong.
Yeah, if you have a conscience and you're fairly, reasonable, okay, look, you busted me, and this is not right. And that's if you're because anybody could make an error and of decision making and stuff, but still, whatever. Yeah,
I guess my thing is, we hear a lot. We need more people in the world like that. No, be that people. Be that person. Don't say we need another person like that. Be that person. Don't say somebody needs to clean this up. Clean it up your damn self. Or clean up, don't cause the mess. Don't add to the mess. That's what I'm saying. Show some respect for everybody around you, and especially for yourself.
And for yourself.
Yeah. Anybody can throw a cup out the window, but a slob is the person that does it.
Yeah.
So, just, I don't know.
I think we're on the same page. We're all on the same page, I would say.
I mean, we're all just trying to get along. I mean, and there, as far as we know, there are no sequels to this life. So let's just have fun, but be respectful of one another.
We don't know that there are sequels or not, but there is a show on Netflix called The Good Place, where there is a sequel, and it's quite the interesting show, funny, entertaining, and intelligent. So I'll just. Hey, did you just see that? Did you?
Yes, I did. I just saw that flash down below. I don't know what that was.
Okay.
Maybe that's our signal. We've been on for an hour 40. Maybe that's our signal. We need to jump out.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the lizard people have been listening in.
Well,
and they just had we could only hope. And they just had a glitch and allowed us to see.
A glitch in the Matrix?
Yeah. Maybe their interface.
That's another movie I've never seen.
It's it's very sci-fi. So you have to take that into account. But as far as watchability, for me, the first one, they're all good, but the first one is like primo. So, but whatever. My recommendation leading out is The Good Place. I think it's a great series. So
if I had Netflix, I would check it out, but I don't have Netflix. I'm still that much of a cultural infidel. And for those of you keeping score, no, I have not made the foray into the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet. I'm still considering it. But I got to tell you, the trailers look cool as hell. So, all right, we better go ahead and shut down.
All right.
I can carry on forever.
Catch you guys.
See you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it.